future is now.
Hi, everyone. Cheryl Cran here. Really great to see you again and have you listen to me on this next podcast episode. And today it's just me on my own again. You know, I like to have guests for some of them. And for some of them, I like to just hang and share with you some of the thoughts that I'm going through as I deal with clients and work with the privilege of working with clients and having conversations and coaching sessions and consulting sessions and all the work that I do. So today I want to talk about something I just wrote about on LinkedIn called how to think like a futurist and why that's so important in today's reality. You know, it's funny because when I present these ideas, a lot of times some of the pushback that I might get from an audience member or from a client might be, you know, Cheryl, that's all well and good, but I don't have time. You know, I've got to be a psychologist and I've got to be a data analyst and I've got to be, you know, smart on the finance and I've got to do all these things. Everything I share is never to add more work. It's actually to integrate into what you're already doing, your existing success strategies. So if you're doing it in a way that I believe is the right way to do it, which is through a micro-learning approach, it means that you're taking everything you listen to, whether it's my podcast or any other information that you're absorbing, and you're making it part of your daily practice. You're making it part of your leadership practice. You're making it part of your work practice. So when I set something up for you aspirationally, like you need to think like a futurist, I'm not asking you to do all the things that come along with what a futurist does, which is daily ongoing research and disseminating that research into strategy. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking you to shift your mindset and to look at the attributes of how a futurist thinks so that you can apply that to the lens with which you're looking through when you're interacting with teammates or clients or colleagues or your boss. It just helps to expand that mindset. So the attributes of a futurist mindset are things like, you know, every futurist I know has a mindset that's very open and curious. They're extremely open to, you know, the insane, the inane, the weird and the wacky. And so for literal minded people or analytical people listening to me or watching this video, that can sometimes be really difficult because unless you're, you know, from an analytical mindset, that attitude is unless it's logical, unless it's, you know, proven, unless it's, you know, I can see it, feel it, touch it, it's not valid to me. I do respect that mindset because that mindset, that analytical mindset, that logical mindset is required as well for success. I'm asking us to increase our mindset to include those abilities of analysis, but also, depending on where you are in your range of comfort, stretching your mind just a little bit to weird, wacky, open, curious, you know, what if we did it this way? What if we considered this crazy idea that this client has proposed for us? That's kind of a foundational mindset thinking process for somebody who thinks like a futurist. The other thing, the attribute that I think that most futurists have is they're not just spouting off these far off futures or sharing trends to shock or wow or have people go, oh, I never thought of that. I think it's more about when we're not looking at the future or we're not looking at progress through the lens of a futurist, we're missing a lot of creative opportunities. So, for example, when you are looking at through the lens of a futurist, you're looking at, well, what could things look like differently than they are today? So many of us do this on a personal level. We might go, well, what will my life look like in 5 years or 10 years? And we can sort of wrap our heads around that based on the patterns in our past. So for a lot of us, when we do, you know, self-goal setting and such, we can look at where our past's been, we can look at our aspirations, what we want to create, and then we can sort of almost predict our own futures based on those factors. From a expanded futurist mindset, it's like taking that same interest of curious and open and weird and wacky and sort of opening our mind to other forms of data as well. So if you're somebody who you maybe consistently only read the New York Times, or, you know, you only read the Harvard Business Review, or opposite to that, you only read the comics. A futurist mindset wants us to actually go a little bit outside of our comfort zone and absorb information that's not normally in our wheelhouse. So for me, I'm not actually naturally analytically minded. My mind is more towards the future, the wild, the wacky, the open, the potential possibilities. That's my personality. However, I have learned to bring myself into that an analytical, data-based, research-based, logical-minded way of looking at things in order to balance out that expansive futurist mindset. So again, a simple daily task is, in addition, when you're scrolling through your Apple News feed, for example, rather than go to what you always go to, you might just go to something that's like completely off script for you. And that could be an example of just absorbing information and data that's different than what you normally consume. That's another way of looking and thinking like a futurist. Another aspect of it is asking questions, but not with the desire to irritate or bother people, but asking questions for the purpose of finding out really where they're coming from. I really believe that we are in the era of context. So context is queen, context is king, in that the more we can understand situational dynamics, the more we can apply ready-made solutions. And context is a sister, if you will, to multiple perspectives. And multiple perspectives, which I've spoken about and shared with on this podcast, and I coach clients on this, is such a huge piece of being future ready and thinking like a futurist, because multiple perspectives is different than open mind, curious, wild, and wacky. Multiple perspectives is you are able to lift yourself out of your own mindset and look at the variety of ways that people think about things. You're able to build context that set and put yourself in other people's shoes to see how they might be viewing the situation from their lens and their vantage point. At its most, I would say, refined level, multiple perspectives means you're able to understand your own self, what makes you tick. You have a great understanding of personalities and different personality styles of others. You can identify them quickly. You have an elevated perspective of generational values, not from an ageist standpoint, but from how each generation might filter things based on their upbringing and their values that were shaped during their upbringing. You have a heightened awareness of what's going on in the world, global events, and you bring that into your awareness. You have a heightened awareness of cultural differences and how different cultures, where one culture might think something's favorable and another might find it offensive. So that alone might be overwhelming for many of you listening, going, oh my gosh, my head, how do I hold all of that information in my mind and navigate? And that's a really valid, I think, response. And again, let me just dial it back a bit and say to you, you don't have to do all of that all at once. Literally, you could start by just today saying, I'm going to be open and curious. And then the next day say, I'm going to use any future disagreement that I have as an experiment in multiple perspectives. So just doing that lets you kind of elevate your mind to, I don't have to do anything right now to change. She hasn't given me a bunch of exercises. There is this opportunity to just sort of notice and have these micro moments of noticing. And so I think that from a futurist perspective, if you just did those few things, I could add to that list, by the way. And there is a recent article on LinkedIn that I wrote about this today, and it's May 2nd. So you can go and check out that article on LinkedIn. But it's really, I get, as you can tell, I get super energized because I really believe, and I've been doing leadership and future and teams and personal development work for over 20 years. And I can honestly say to you, interacting with tons of clients, coaching, consulting, the number one piece that shifts, that if somebody shifts it, it changes everything, is your mindset. And so when we can come up with those little micro learnings and those micro expansions of our mindset, we are now elevating our success strategies. We're elevating our competencies. We're elevating our actually well-being. We're building more meaning in our life. We're not becoming so, I would say, rigid or fixed in our ideas or notions. We're actually be able to enjoy life even more because we're looking at it through that lens of possibility. So I hope that's given you something to think about. Again, nothing for you to do, no exercises to do, simply thinking and looking at curious, being open, not shutting down any ideas, seeing any future disagreement or confrontation or conflict as an experiment in learning to look at multiple perspectives. I'll leave you with that for this episode. I would love to hear from you about how you've applied this and what results it created for you. If you want more information, please go to nextmapping.com, and I look forward to connecting with you.